Okay, so this is my baby, my snare drum, which I absolutely love. I always watch the New Year's Day concert from Vienna, and every year I see the snare drum they're using, which is like this one, and I think I'd love one like that. And then one year I just thought, well, why don't I go and get one? So I took a trip out to Austria, a lovely little place near a ski resort called Zell am See. So I thought, well, I'll go there for a holiday as well. So I took my wife and my children along. We had a lovely holiday there. And then I took a trip to the factory where they hand make these drums. And it was quite a magical experience. We took the train and we were picked up at the station by the owner of the factory. Now I thought it was going to be a big operation, many people working there. It was basically the guy who makes the drums and his father. And his father picked us up in the car, didn't speak a word of English, so I thought this is going to be interesting. But then he took us driving up through the mountains, higher and higher and higher. We're getting in the mist and amongst the pine trees. And I thought, where are we going here? And then we came across this chalet amongst all the pine trees, and this is their factory, basically. So downstairs was a workshop where they make the drums, and upstairs was a studio where all the drums are laid out. And he makes timpani and drum kits and just snare drums like this, just from the wood that's around him, the pine or the apple wood, or this one's made of walnut, which is why my children christened it Walnut. So it's a lovely looking drum, as you can see, but also a wonderful sounding drum. I've got a calf skin on it, which is gets a much more responsive sound. Many people use plastic skins like this one, but I find that the plastic skin, it sort of fights against the sticks, whereas a calf skin absorbs the sticks, and I find it so much easier to play. And the sound is so responsive. I did the first bolero I did on it. The conductor actually couldn't hear me. I was playing, the sound was too quiet. Now normally, as many drummers will know, if you're playing the bolero, the conductor always thinks it's too loud and you're having to play far quieter. But I was playing it so quiet that he couldn't hear. So it was Jamie Phillips, the conductor, and he said to me, just come nearer the front. I don't want you to play any louder, just come nearer the front. So it was perfect. First time I've ever been asked to play louder, or for it to, or the fact that it was too quiet in bolero. And then of course at the end, when it's really loud, the sound there, I won't do it now because it might well blow the microphones, but it really is tremendously loud. So it's got that great dynamic range, the drum. So we're doing Nielsen's Fifth Symphony, which is a major piece for the snare drum. It's a wonderful piece of music as well. The second movement, it starts with this heartbreakingly beautiful tune, which then weaves its way through the orchestra, and it's then ruined by the snare drum. Now the idea is that the snare drum is evil, trying to triumph over good. As is often the case in music, the good triumphs over evil, and the snare drum is dispatched off stage, and some players do it where they actually walk off stage themselves, and there's a kind of theatrical thing. I'm a bit worried about doing that though, because we're playing it in Sheffield, and there is a story about a snare drum player who wanted to walk off stage to play the snare drum bit, and the door was locked and he couldn't get off. So the snare drum bit didn't happen off stage. So I'm a bit nervous about that. And we're also doing it in Leeds as well, which is a very steeply raked stage, and I think it might be a little bit too theatrical to walk off through the orchestra or up through the audience. So I'm going to get someone else to do the offstage part for me. But that, I guess, is the side drum player shaking his fist at the orchestra from a distance, and the orchestra has won. The orchestra is battling against the snare drum, and the snare drum has a very good go at defeating the orchestra, but ultimately fails. And what Nielsen writes is that the snare drum player should just make it up as he's going along. He writes some rhythms to start with, but then the part dictates that you should just improvise, basically. So I've got a written improvisation. I've got some ideas that I'm going to do, but basically I'll just see how the mood goes. But it has to be as angry and as competitive as possible, really trying to destroy the orchestra. So it's great fun, as you can imagine, and it's a real pleasure to play the piece. It's a shame to spoil such a wonderful tune, but I think you hear enough of the wonderful tune first before I come in and try and spoil it. In the first movement of the symphony, the snare drum plays a repetitive ostinato rhythm. Now that comes back in the second movement as part of the cadenza. I will certainly use this drum for the first movement. I'm thinking I might use this one though for the cadenza because it's got a more gutsy sound. Because it's a metal shell, it gets a kind of nastier sound, and I think I might try that. Whether I use it or not in the concert, I don't know. But because this is a wood shell, this one here, it's a more mellow sound. And you can hear it's got more of a tinny edge to it, this drum. So I might well use that. I'm really looking forward to it. It's a wonderful piece for the orchestra to play, and a wonderful piece for me to play, great show-off piece for me to play. So please do come along and hear us play Nielsen's Fifth Symphony.